total breakdown.
It's cold out here, and the temperature wasn't much warmer in the Situation Room. Our meeting did not last long.
All told, the meeting lasted just 14 minutes.
He asked Speaker Pelosi, will you agree to my wall? She said no. And he just got up and said, then we have nothing to discuss, and he just walked out.
I very calmly said, if you're not going to give us strong borders, bye-bye, and I left. I didn't rant, I didn't rave like you reported.
不管有没有拂袖而去，结果都是一样的。
Federal workers will not be receiving their paychecks, and what that means in their lives is tragic in terms of their credit rating, paying their mortgage, paying their rent.
Not everybody will get their back pay. Thousands of workers on government contracts could be out of luck.
Mr. President, what do you say to those federal workers?
I think they have been terrific. These are terrific patriots. A lot of them agree with what I'm doing.
I'm 45 years old, and I shouldn't have to pawn my belongings to pay for medication when I do have a job. I'm just not able to do that job.
The president seems to be insensitive to that. He thinks maybe they could just ask their father for more money, but they can't.
It's not easy to go to bed thinking where are you going to get money, you know? We're thinking, are we going to have to get in debt with credit cards to get by? It's really tough.
They could solve this problem in literally 15 minutes.
虽然川普一再强调政府关门是民主党的错，不过民调结果并非如此。最新民调显示，47%的人怪罪川普害政府关门，高于了怪民主党的33%。
35% of Americans say they support Congress putting up the money for a border wall. Only about a third of Americans. 25% of Americans said they support Trump shutting down the government over his wall funding demands. That means 75% of Americans do not.
Pay the workers, federal Trump.
Some of the hundreds of thousands of federal workers caught in the middle of all this marched on Washington today, calling for an end to the partial government shutdown caused by Trump's demand for that wall.
In fact, 2 federal employee unions are currently suing the Trump administration over the shutdown.
回顾过去40年，美国政府关门也不是第一次了。
Tonight, much of the government remains shut down.
Today, as of noon, almost half of the federal government employees are idle.
There have been 15 federal government shutdowns since 1981. Many were short, a day or less, while others lasted weeks. Before the 1980s, a lack of a federal budget didn't necessarily mean parts of the government would stop functioning. Agencies would stay open after their funding lapsed under the assumption that Congress would pay them back. In the late 1970s, Congress kept missing its budget deadline, mainly over tangential issues such as government funding for abortions and busing. In 1980, Democratic Representative Gladys Noon Spellman of Maryland wanted to make sure federal workers got paid on time in case of a funding lapse, but she was blocked by a 19th century statute. Then Attorney General Benjamin Civiletti said that the Anti-Deficiency Act of 1870 prevented agencies from spending any money not authorized by Congress. Only activities protecting property and ensuring the safety of human life were permitted by agencies after their funding had lapsed. This legal precedent has continued today.
We should reopen the government now. We should work to balance the budget now.
The longest funding gap in modern history happened in December 1995, when the federal government shut down for 21 days after President Clinton and the Republican-controlled Congress could not agree on a plan to balance the budget.
这个关门21天的记录，到1月12号就轻易的被川普跨越，但是川普仍然不打算退让。他甚至亲自飞了一趟德州，到美墨边境视察。
President Trump surveyed the U.S.-Mexico border near McAllen and the people who protect it.
And we're certainly under attack by criminal gangs, by criminals themselves, by the human traffickers, and by drugs of all kinds.
川普的打算是，不如直接跳过国会，宣布进入紧急状态。
I have the absolute right to declare a national emergency. The lawyers have so advised me. I'm not prepared to do that yet, but if I have to, I will. We will build the wall.
Presidents have declared national emergencies nearly 60 times since 1976. President Bush invoked one after 9/11, and President Obama declared an emergency in response to a flu outbreak. Mr. Trump would use the declaration to free up billions in unallocated military construction money.
The president is also trying to rewrite history, clarifying what he meant during the campaign.
I will build a great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Who's going to pay for the wall? Who's going to pay for the wall? When I say Mexico is going to pay for the wall, that's what I mean. Mexico's paying for the wall. And I didn't mean, please write me a check. I mean, very simply, they're paying for it in the trade deal.
But that's not true. Before the election, his campaign released various proposals to force Mexico to fund the wall, stating it's an easy decision for Mexico. Make a one-time payment of $5 to $10 billion. Still, he said he would rather deal with China than with the Democrats.
I find China, frankly, in many ways, to be far more honorable than Brian, Chuck, and Nancy. I really do. I think that China is actually much easier to deal with than the opposition party.
然而，围墙真的是解决川普所谓边界危机的最好方法吗？
This is a tunnel. This is an area that we actually have wall.
It was unclear how more wall would stop that.
If there's a concrete wall in front of you, go through it, go over it, go around it, but get to the other side of that wall.
It is nearly the midpoint of Donald Trump's 4-year mandate, a good time to take stock of what has been the most unusual presidency in modern times. Watching his first 2 years in office, what is striking about Donald Trump is that much more than any president I have watched or read about, he is a gambler. Unconstrained by precedent, history, norms, or official advice, Trump simply acts on his impulses and his ideas.
Hey, John, seriously, John, do you think I should just sign?
Well, the argument has been made that you can sign these bills that have nothing to do with border security.
Do you think I should just sign?
And I'm saying that if you sign that, these workers can start getting paid. The government can start working.
So you would do that if you were in my position? You'd do that?
I'm not in your position. I'm asking you if that's something you would do.
I'm asking you, would you do that if you were in my position? If you would do that, you should never be in this position. Because you'd never get anything done.
His management style is so imperious and narcissistic that he struggles to retain talented officials. He has no background in policy nor any inclination to learn anything about it. Now he has shut down the government with rhetoric that leaves him little room for a face-saving compromise. As the pressure increases from the House Democrats, Robert Mueller, China, expect more impulsive, emotional decision-making, not less. Buckle your seatbelts for 2019, and let's get started.